stablecoins are the killer app for crypto that are actually being used day to day, not for speculative purposes, but for real payments.
This is what many folks are describing as the year of stablecoins.
Really what we're set on is bringing the emerging world to the rest of the world and bringing the rest of the world to the emerging world.
The Mississippi River can't keep you apart. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning into The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, and I'm very excited for today's conversation. I was a little worried. We had 2 shows recorded today. We haven't done a podcast in a while. And my Wi-Fi was on the fritz. It may still be on the fritz. So hopefully we can get through this. On the other side of the mic, joining us, Justin at Yellow Card. Thanks for taking the time. We've got a lot to unpack. Before we do, let's just take a moment to thank our sponsors. Uranium.io, an entirely new marketplace for trading uranium and powered by Tezos technology, is live. As global energy demand rises and nuclear power becomes a key player in decarbonization, demand for U3O8 is increasing. But up until now, its access to retail investors has been limited. Unlike other precious metals like gold or silver, the traditional uranium market has high barriers with minimum lot sizes of tens of thousands of pounds that's limited retail participation. Tokenized uranium breaks these barriers, enabling anyone to own physical uranium with accessible pricing and no need for complex storage. Investing in uranium is now widely accessible, and you can learn more at www.uranium.io. For crypto and DeFi professionals looking to contribute to a team committed to innovation in digital assets, Fidelity Investments is now hiring. Why Fidelity? For starters, they've been exploring Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. They were the first traditional asset manager to launch a native crypto business and among the first to launch a Bitcoin exchange-traded product. Innovation is in their DNA. Fidelity invests in their talents by supporting and developing associates through continued education opportunities, casual crypto-focused discussion groups, and on-the-job experience of working with new technologies. If you want to work on cutting-edge products and explore the new frontier of DeFi and blockchain, Fidelity is for you. Their products continue to improve and evolve, staying ahead of this rapidly changing digital asset landscape. So go ahead, explore Fidelity Crypto Careers today by going to crypto.fidelitycareers.com to learn more. That's crypto.fidelitycareers.com. Fidelity is an equal opportunity employer. So Justin, you're a new guest to the show. Yellow Card might be new to a lot of our listeners. I was actually looking through my email the other day. I think I was maybe looking for some of the notes your team sent over for this conversation. And I actually found a thread with Chris. I was on the thread, but I don't know if I was emailing with him. I was just on the thread from 2020. And I was like,
Wow.
Wait a second, because I only met Chris this past year, formally, I guess you could say. But I was like, oh my God, it's like 2 ships crossing in the night. Obviously, that probably has a lot to do with the fact that you guys are operating in the global South. Walk us through the firm, the mission, and what's been going on since 2020.
Yeah. It's been a minute. So I am the co-founder and CTO of Yellow Card, and we are the leading licensed stablecoin payments orchestrator for Africa and the emerging markets. And so essentially we enable businesses of all shapes and sizes to be able to make international payments, manage their treasury, access USD liquidity, and really leverage the power of stablecoins to be able to facilitate payments across the emerging markets. So, really what we're trying to do is, empower businesses across the emerging markets, as well as enable businesses in the US and Europe and around the world to be able to enter into the emerging markets as well. The big key thing is that stable coins, are a big paradigm shift that enables essentially a proxy to the US dollar, which really empowers businesses to be able to access, something that's traditionally very difficult to access in emerging markets.
That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, stablecoins are this is what many folks are describing as the year of stablecoins. From a business perspective, what does the business model for a company that's positioning themselves like Yellow Card? What does that look like relative to an exchange?
That's a good question. So, when it comes to payment orchestration, we are, really trying to power exchanges, fintechs, remittance companies across the world to be able to access emerging markets. Um, so, like a real use case is that we have companies that are using our APIs and services to be able to collect and facilitate payments across the 20 plus countries that we support within our network. And so they're able to collect, say, local fiat, instantly swap that to stable coins, and then be able to make or disperse payments out in local fiat as well with another swap happening. And so essentially we're enabling businesses to not have local exposure and to be able to access that US dollar for managing their treasury.
And what are some of the key challenges in building that infrastructure out, and then that infrastructure out in Africa specifically? I feel like it might even be easier just because you're not sort of having to navigate the impediments of existing financial infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I definitely wouldn't say it's easier. I think that in general, payments is, not an easy thing. But if you add on the lack of interoperability and some of the challenges infrastructure wise across the emerging markets, that difficulty just gets amplified in a big way. I mean, it's not too uncommon to have fairly large scale bank and mobile money network downtimes, leading to payment failures and things like that. And so it ends up being a struggle, really being able to facilitate these payments, maintain state. And so our system has been, kind of purpose built from the ground up to be able to abstract a lot of these pains away. Um, in terms of fragility of networks and banks, we really want to, for our businesses and customers that we support, abstract all of that away. So all they're interfacing with is a kind of modern first class service that they would come to expect in the US or Europe, along those lines.
And can you just maybe walk us through the approach of combining payment rails across such a large continent of a sort of patchwork of countries? What does that look like relative to what we have set up here, maybe in the States, right? With the card networks, one layer, Fedwire, maybe as well, and then the different types of bank and fintech operating on top.
I think it's one of the challenges that is a really inhibiting to businesses trying to scale across the continent. When you think about the United States, we, things work. We have interoperability amongst all of the different states. We're able to make payments, cards accepted everywhere. But if you think about emerging markets and say you take a specific payment method, so we'll use mobile money as an example, and say you're in two, nearby countries. So say you're using MTN Ghana and MTN Nigeria. There is no interoperability between the two. Same company, same payment network, no speaking to one another. And so when it comes to actually being able to send money from Nigeria to Ghana or vice versa, you're really limited in your ability to do that. And so that leads to a lot of different ways that people end up actually facilitating payments. One of the most common cases that we hear about constantly is, individuals that are paying someone to physically drive a bag of cash across borders to deliver that money, at a 10 to 15% premium simply because there's no other way. It is quite literally the most effective way to deliver that cash. And so that's where, stable coins and the system that we're building comes into play. Our payments engine is essentially an interoperability layer for accessing payments across the emerging world. So when you're speaking to Yellow Card services, we're treating all of the endpoints. So that would be mobile money networks, uh, banking systems across the continent. We treat them all as equals, and you're able to essentially route your payments depending on the end destination. And behind the scenes, we are doing a lot of back end infrastructure work to be able to support high availability, high reliability payments that we would expect in the US and Europe. And really what that looks like is having multiple layers of redundancy, having a very robust kind of failure and retry system, very verbose checks that we go through across all of the various systems that we put together. And so, really the approach is building out a core payments engine that we're able to plug and play more and more endpoints into, as in, we have access, we expand to a new country and open up bank accounts with banking partners. Well, then we can now switch that on to the same network. And now our existing customers and new customers are able to access those rails. It's really a plug and play system to be that inoperability layer for the emerging world that doesn't exist today.
Even when you have that interoperability, that interoperable network, right? You still have the challenge. It's a challenge that is not unique to Africa. Also exists in Europe as well. Doesn't really exist in the United States because we're a bit more homogenous from a language and cultural perspective. Even though you might disagree that me being from New Jersey is maybe a world's away from where you are in Atlanta, we're so much more similar than the Italians and the French
Yeah,
or the Kenyans and the South Africans. And
that's true.
so, even if you nail and grok that interoperability network layer, you still have the very tall order of um, targeting very specific cultures and
Mhm.
demographics.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where it really comes into play. Like, as a company, we have very large team across all of the countries that we operate in, and they are, of the 200 plus individuals we have on the team, we are about 1% not African. Almost everyone on the entire team is in an emerging market on the ground. And so that enables us to, really understand the markets that we're operating in from multiple facets, and also being able to have people on the ground actually using these products and working with companies to help unlock these corridors for them, and manage their payments effectively. And so really, taking an approach where actually being on the ground with real teams, kind of helps remove that boundary a bit.
And so it's having, presences in each of these individual countries.
Yeah, exactly. And having teams on the ground there. I mean, that goes all the way from engineers to product managers to customer service to marketing. Everything is meant to be on the actual continent.
From an infrastructure perspective, building a business there, you obviously have to pick a lot of partners. What does that approach look like in terms of working with companies like Lightspark and PayPal and others? How does that help facilitate the growth and
Back to what I was saying earlier, one of our primary missions is to enable companies to be able to enter the emerging markets and bring their world-class services to the individuals that we serve. And so, what this looks like in reality is that we have our B2B services. So this is our payments API engine that enables collections and disbursements across 20 countries. We have these companies that are building on top of this service in order to expand their own kind of operational footprint and be able to enter the emerging market space without having to deal with all of the nuance and complexity and headaches that comes to setting up entities and bank accounts, and all of the to-dos in order to actually operate in emerging markets. From a tech standpoint and from an operations standpoint, we really try to abstract the pains away and make it as easy as possible.
how have recent sort of market dynamics impacted the business? If you're obviously dealing with just payments relative to cryptocurrency trading, it seems like probably less tethered to, no pun intended, um, the price of various cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, yeah. I think a fun fact is about 3-ish years ago, 95% of our volume was Bitcoin. Um, about from that point on, about 2.5-ish years ago, we have been about 95 to 98% stable coins ever since. And so really it's quite validating that stablecoins are actually being used across the emerging world. From my perspective, stablecoins are the killer app for crypto that are actually being used day to day, not for speculative purposes, but for real payments. And so really the hype cycles that go on and reaching all-time highs, we'll get some additional activity, but really we are driving real utility and facilitating payments for people that enable their business to grow and need this type of service. And so less on the speculative kind of crypto side and more on stablecoins providing a real use case for people who really need it.
So, what was the aha moment that made you guys realize that building payment infrastructure in Africa was your calling?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm from Alabama originally. My co-founder Chris is from Louisiana. So we're two Southern guys from the U.S. That spend a lot of time in building a large company in Africa. So yeah, it's a very reasonable question.
The Mississippi River can't keep you apart.
No, it can't. um, so to give you a little bit on the backstory, I've been into Bitcoin since 2013 or so, after reading the white paper, and just ever since have been obsessed with it and the idea of decentralized protocols and what it can really do to empowering the world. Um, I wouldn't shut up about it. And then Chris and I we were volunteering at a camp in Alabama actually, and constantly I was just talking about Bitcoin even at this camp. Um, and then he went off. He's a year older than me. He went off to college, and every single time I would come up to visit him and our friends, I would just keep going on about Bitcoin. Finally, he saw it being sold on eBay. This is back in I don't know, 2014 or 15, being sold on eBay, and he was like, "Hey man, you know about Bitcoin? I know about selling stuff on eBay. Like, let's make some money." Uh, and so we were uh, basically selling Bitcoin on eBay back when there was, no policies and terms and conditions about it. Um, and essentially we learned about chargebacks and PayPal fraud. We completely lost our shirts on that. And keep in mind, I'm a 17-year-old, he's an 18-year-old, freshman in college. And so we're like, okay, we've lost all of that. Obviously people want Bitcoin. How do we legitimize this a little bit more? And so we decided to, well, firstly, we set up shops across the US with all of our buddies at universities to be able to sell Bitcoin in person. And then when FinCEN started kicking in, we started getting some BSA regulation. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's do this the right way with KYC and AML. And this is where the name Yellow Card comes from. We were going to be building, or we were building a gift card for the US market. You can imagine, a gift card and a Walmart gift card rack with a $50 kind of Bitcoin symbol on it. You can go and buy your techie nephew or niece a $50 Ethereum gift card or Bitcoin gift card. And as we were building this out, we, we were realizing that we were building this voucher technology. And it just so happens that we met a Nigerian professor at Auburn University in Alabama that was sending about $250 back home to his family in Lagos, Nigeria. And Wells Fargo charged him a $90 international wire fee. And this is 2015, 16. We walked up to the man and we are like, hey, you realize that you could do this basically for free and instant using Bitcoin, um, and save your family that $90 hit every single month. But then later, we were thinking like, what's this? Yes, we can help this man transfer the store of value from the US to Lagos, Nigeria. But how does that family actually extract that value from it? Of course, if they would have sat on the Bitcoin, then that would have been very good. But um, how do they actually extract that buying power to be able to buy for, goods and services and make payments that they need? And so at that point on, we realized that this voucher-based kind of payment system that we were building out, which is a gimmicky project in the US, can actually have a real use case, um, in Africa and the emerging markets. And so ever since then, I mean, we hopped on a plane, went to Nigeria, and ever since then, we've just been hyper focused on building out this payment infrastructure for Africa, and really empowering businesses and individuals across the continent.
So you get off the plane and then what? Where do
Yeah,
you go?
it was an eye-opening experience, that's for sure. My first time at the Lagos airport, which, if you've never been, I recommend just for the life experience. Um, Not a second time though. Well, yeah. But I had to traffic in Lagos is I'm pretty sure it challenges Beijing for some of the worst traffic. And I'm sitting here in Atlanta right now, which is also a notorious bad traffic. But I can say that Lagos, Nigeria is some of the worst traffic I've ever seen. So it took about 6 hours for us to be picked up at the airport. And finally, two of my engineers that were, picking me up, they paid the Uber driver to drive in the exit of the airport to be able to get to me, bypassing all the security guards because they were trying to bribe them or something like that. They finally get to me after 6 hours of me waiting. I get in the car. We're driving down the road and in this terrible traffic, and we get put our car pushed into a concrete barricade. And this is literally within 5 minutes of me getting in this car after waiting 6 hours. And I look to the left and right at my guys, and it's like I'm freaking out, and they're just sitting there chill. The Uber driver just honks his horn, and we keep going. It's like, wow. It was, definitely an eye-opening experience, that's for sure.
And so building out a startup there, did you ever have any similar, like, not eye-opening, but oh my God, we're screwed moments? And how did you get around it?
Um, that's a good question. I think not necessarily we're screwed. I think we've always had a very kind of positive outlook, as in we are going to figure this out. I think that's one of the driving mentalities that we have. Obviously we're selling crypto in Africa. We've got to figure it out, and that's just part of our DNA. I think as a company is figuring it out. And so there's been times where we've had regulatory challenges or in the early days, technology challenges with, realizing, hey, we can't, rely on, banking and mobile money infrastructure like we would a Stripe or a PayPal. We have to really build out layers upon layers of mechanisms. Um, and so there's been, quite a few different scenarios like that where it's, hey, let's get in a war room together. We've got this large problem that we've got to figure out, and always making use of our team and the real wide range of cultures and experiences that we have. It's we haven't failed yet in terms of being able to solve kind of difficult to tackle problems.
Huh. Yeah. I
But
mean,
knock on wood, though.
yeah, yeah. I'll do it for you. I've got a wood table right here. Um, what do you think? Like, obviously, navigating the thorny path of a founder. Um, what are some of the lessons you learned the hard way?
I think it was extremely popular when we were, or this mindset was extremely popular when we were starting Yellow Card of, this hustle kind of grind mentality. And I think that's something that a lot of young founders will struggle with is constantly just grinding, 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 and not spending any time on mental or kind of your personal self. I've seen that trend. I've experienced it. My co-founders experienced it, where you're sacrificing so much for building and developing your company that you forget you've got to, be healthy and alive in order to continue and amplify that growth. Um, and so, that's definitely been a trend that I've noticed. I think it's gotten a little better over the last few years, but another one that I see more and more, and it's quite prevalent across emerging markets as well, and rightfully so, is a lack of focus. I think one of the things that we have done particularly well is as soon as we saw that real use case of what we were building, we have not shifted our focus off of achieving that mission and enabling that man at the Wells Fargo to be able to send money back home, and they instantly be able to access that buying power. And so I see a lot of young founders get really distracted and chase the shiny things. I've seen it on the NFT cycles, I've seen it on the AI cycles. It's like, no, you've started your company with a set vision and mission. you are doing the best to your customers, your employees, your investors, whoever, if you stay hyper focused and don't get distracted by the shiny things that come.
What do you think helps, build trust in the market, right? You have to proselytize or evangelize stable coins and also yellow card to your markets. Which one's more difficult, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't want folks to um attribute this or view this in the way that they might view other sort of financial schemes, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean that's a really really good question, and it's something that we constantly tackle, and I think it really comes down to education in the market. I'll use a real example is, and it's a very poignant memory that I have in the early days of us expanding across Nigeria and scaling there. Some of our top customers who would move, several Bitcoin a week, they didn't know what a transaction like a blockchain hash was, but they were moving, tens of thousands of dollars a day worth of Bitcoin. And I think what really is the key piece, because trust is so important, but I think what's even more important is actually delivering on what you say. So for instance, something that our sales department and our country managers and broadly our team does is solution for businesses and individuals that we come across that have kind of unique scenarios and situations where money is locked in certain countries, or they're struggling to maybe repatriate or move money in between entities across different countries. And really what we do is say, hey, this is a problem that you have, we're aware, and here is how we could help you actually solve this problem using stable coins. Let's do a test, and we'll do a simple $5 smoke test essentially to be able to prove to them, hey, we are able to do this, and facilitate this payment, and significantly increase the efficiency of your treasury. And after that, I think once you prove it one or two times, they start feeling the actual benefit and use case of it. Then it becomes a kind of a no brainer, right? It's stable coins as a utility, not as a speculative thing. If we were trying to convince someone to make these payments on Bitcoin, it would be a different conversation versus a stable coin being pegged to the US dollar. And then secondly, more broadly, some initiatives that we have is we've got a Yellow Card Academy, which is a web portal specifically focused on financial literacy. And so this isn't just crypto specific. This is also basic financial literacy when it comes to savings and taxes and, generally money management. But then also, how stable coins can help, empower your own kind of personal finances and financial literacy. And then on top of that, we've done several financial literacy tours across the continent, going to universities and populous cities, and educating individuals on financial literacy and the power of stable coins.
So when you think about the next year, I mean, how much growth can you anticipate in sort of adoption of stablecoins on the continent?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're already seeing massive adoption, not just on the continent, but in the emerging world in general. Stablecoin really being this unifying currency, being a proxy to the dollar. Um, so, really what we're set on is bringing the emerging world to the rest of the world and bringing the rest of the world to the emerging world. And so I am really, planning on us scaling out our payment systems, continuing to enable companies across the world to expand their operations into emerging markets. And so, I'm expected some pretty substantial growth, especially where we're at in the market with stable coins, and just how much kind of visibility and looks that the industry is getting right now. So I'm excited. I think that we're going to be able, through stable coins and our payments engine, be able to make a quite a big impact this year.
So what type of maybe if you showcase the product roadmap, what do you guys have cooking for the next year to build on that momentum?
Yeah. So right now we're really focused on our kind of business services. And so we are releasing a more holistic portal for managing treasury and making payments that's in the works. And then also, currently we have an API that enables on and off ramping in 20 countries. We are going to be expanding on top of that and building out a kind of more robust system so that you are able to kind of integrate far easily and build more bespoke custom solutions without having to do a lot of programming and kind of more software work yourself. So really easing the availability or the integration into our services and into mobile money networks and banks across the world.
How do you balance the needs of whether it's with new products or existing products, the needs of merchants relative to consumer users? How
Mm.
are those needs different?
Yeah, I think that at the core, it ends up being fundamentally the same, where people are trying to make payments, collect payments, um, store, have a store of value, and so fundamentally, from a technology perspective, we are always focused on building a centralized core that's is flexible enough to account for any use case. If we have clients that need to facilitate, API API driven transactions across the continent, we can facilitate that. If we have a small business in Nigeria that needs to import goods from Japan, we can help facilitate that payment for them. So really, building out a holistic stack of products built on this centralized payment core to really, be able to tackle any unique money movement challenge that exists in the emerging markets.
What do you think is looking towards next year the most underrated, overrated aspect of this market? Obviously, RWAs are somewhat batched into the stablecoin conversation. There's a whole host of yield bearing stablecoins coming to market. How does this foundation that you've built translate into maybe a whole more wide range of financial services, opening up other markets to the continent? Something like when I speak with a lot of people, right, it's thinking about how kind of can start with stablecoin, then work your way up to yield bearing accounts, work your way up to savings accounts and investment accounts, all within one wallet sort of infrastructure.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the approach is building out modern world class financial instrumentation that's powered by stable coins under the hood and enabling companies to access this type of instrumentation that they may or may not have access to otherwise. And so, yeah, exactly. With these new developments, we have this foundation. So as developments continue to happen, we're able to plug that in seamlessly, and continue to develop the offerings that we have for the businesses that we support. Other things that I'm particularly excited about, and I think that are relevant to the emerging world, are in the compliance kind of space when it comes to verifiable credentials. I think that and understanding and being able to, with a high degree of certainty, be able to truly have a sense of digital identity. I think right now that's something that's also extremely difficult across the continent, where actually ascertaining an ID number and who that is on the other end, depending on the country, can be a fairly difficult challenge. I mean, in some countries across the continent that I'm aware of, is very equivalent to a social security number kind of database has been, I don't want to say defrauded or exploited, but there are ways where you can generate, legitimate ID numbers. And so we've had to build solutions around that. And so I think that verifiable credentials and the um, the idea of decentralized identifiers are going to be extremely powerful in the long run for the emerging world and the world more broadly as well. So it's an exciting space.
Where can folks learn more? Where can we point them to?
Yeah, if you talking about for a yellow card or verifiable credentials?
For the firm.
Yeah, for Yellow Card, you can go to yellowcard.io. If you want information on our API services, you can go to docs.yellowcard.engineering. Yeah, we're all over.
Amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time. We appreciate the chat.
Thank you, man. It's been
See you
great.
soon.
All right, cheers.